The entire medical system is corrupt. The entire medical system is captured. The medical guidelines, they're written by societies, and these societies are directly funded by pharmaceutical companies. The entire process started with this report. It was written in 1910. What also happened in that era, Bitcoiners would know this. It's no coincidence that it all happened at the same time. This random doctor in middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, in order to go and prosecute them, put them in jail, or shut down his medical school if they're not practicing our own medicine, that takes money to do that. If you have an infinite amount of money from the money printer, that's how you're able to keep this running. And this is why Bitcoin will hopefully fix this.
The only thing more valuable than your Bitcoin is your health. Today, we're sitting down with internal medicine specialist Dr. Ahmad Ammous, who's exposing Big Pharma's manipulative chokehold on medicine and how we got here. He's dropping hard truths on diet, artificial light, and a whole host of lies that a lot of people still believe. We chat about how Bitcoin can help build a better system and what you can do to improve your well-being today. Sound crazy? It's the decentralized health fix you've been waiting for. You can't afford to miss this one. Going beyond Bitcoin to bring you the skills and insights you need to escape the fiat matrix. This is Mentor Sessions. Right off the bat, we would love to get a sense of your thoughts on fiat medicine. And for those who don't know, could you tell our folks at home what your experience is in your personal field? You are a doctor of...
Yes, so I'm a doctor of internal medicine. I specialize in internal medicine. When I was in medical school, I was very disappointed with the stuff they were teaching me. Specifically, it was because I did some dietary changes. I went on the Paleo diet. I cut out processed foods and sugar and bread and immediately felt 1,000 times better than I felt before. And I started wondering, well, if this is making me feel so good, and as far I thought I was healthy before that, but I felt even healthier. I wondered, well, how would this make my patients feel if I would make them try this stuff? And it got me wondering, so why don't they teach us anything about nutrition in medical school? And I started reading a little bit about it, and I realized that the entire medical system is corrupt. The entire medical system is captured by the pharmaceutical industry, and the entire goal of medicine is to sell expensive medications and surgeries for the goal of making profit to these companies rather than help people get better. And coming to that realization was not easy. And ever since, I've been trying my best to help people looking for an alternative from this system.
It's very interesting, Dr. Ammous. I kind of want to pull on a couple threads there quickly, if I may. One, for someone who's actually not familiar with kind of the different specializations in medicine, could you just give us a little bit of a brief overview of what internal medicine is, kind of like where you're currently working and what maybe the day-to-day looks like, just to give them a sort of a framework for what you're doing in the fiat mind still. And then additionally on that too, the curiosity about the paleo diet, where did that initially come from? Was there a problem that you had, or was it just kind of a like, this is interesting, I kind of want to experiment, or was it some friend that was like, you got to try this?
Yeah, so the internal medicine is basically adult medicine, everything that's non-surgical. So we deal with everything in the body that's internal, organs, how organs interact with each other. And so our patient population is mostly older patients with a lot of medical issues, and it tends to be very elderly patients with multiple medical issues. And the entire specialization of internal medicine is just built on, this is how you diagnose this disease, and this is the medication that we can give for it. And there's not really that much insight into, so what's the natural progression? Do people actually improve? Do we achieve cure? You don't get any of that in medical education, but only if you have a little bit of insight once you start practicing, when you start realizing that we're not actually helping people get any better. There's no final solutions. These medications, you put the patient on the medication and they're on it for the rest of their lives. The problem might get 30% better, but it never goes away completely. So that's sort of internal medicine. I work as something called a hospitalist, which means I see internal medicine patients while they're admitted in the hospital. So this tends to be the sickest population in a certain the sickest patients in a certain population, and I see them at their lowest point. And there's not that much point of I'm able to intervene on their diet or lifestyle at that point. And that's why I started my own online consulting health service to sort of help people in more of the way that I want to help people.
Dr. Ammous, I want to ask, being an internal medicine specialist, working as a hospitalist, and so you're currently residing in that kind of fiat medical institution infrastructure, I'm wondering, one, if you can outline kind of where you see the fiat corruption, what it's doing to our medical institutions and to our overall health, and in particular, if you have any stories or history where you actually experienced pressure from this sort of system to perhaps pursue a treatment with a patient that you did not necessarily think was the best option or maybe even the first one to try.
Yeah, it's a good question. So when people talk about corruption in medicine, the corruption is at such a higher level than most people can imagine. So it's not like pharmaceutical companies paying doctors to prescribe certain medications versus recommend lifestyle. It's a lot deeper than that. It's a lot higher than that. And the corruption is that the medical guidelines that doctors are supposed to follow and that they're legally liable to follow, they're written by societies such as the American Medical Association, the American College of Cardiology, etc. And these societies are directly funded by pharmaceutical companies. So, the system is captured. If you don't follow these guidelines, then you are legally liable with how you treat the patient. And so the only approach is based on drug and surgery. My work in the hospital, I give people what I think they should do, and I also tell them this is what I'm supposed to tell you to do. Okay. So I give them both options. Okay?
Nice.
And so that's kind of how I cover myself. But my online practice, where I see patients completely on my own, and it's off the fiat system, off the insurance system, I tell them what I feel personally. But when insurance companies and hospitals are involved, it's different.
That's very interesting. I'm curious, just I imagine it's not that many, but maybe I'm wrong, right? I kind of think about like trying to orange pill people, trying to talk to people about Bitcoin. It's like, I really think you should check this out, and here's why, and here's all the books that you should go through. And very few actually do pursue that or dive a little bit deeper. Were there any patients that perhaps did listen to that additional advice, and did they see any benefits as a result that you might be aware of? Of course, working as a hospitalist, you probably don't see them that much after the fact. You're kind of getting them in the worst state, so there might not be any follow-up information.
Yeah, I mean, every day I'm surprised that people actually want to know. They want to know, what should I be eating? People's instinct knows that what I'm eating is going to affect whatever disease I have. And so I'm always getting asked by people, and, I don't get enough time to tell them exactly what they need to do, but I give them general guidelines. I give them some resources to where they can go. I don't know how effective it is, because what I tell them is so against the mainstream that they don't even know where to start. Like, for them, the worst culprit for any disease is meat. What I'm telling them is that you need to eat more meat. So this is like, it's very confusing for them. And considering I see them for such a short time in my hospital job, my online business, I get to talk to people for at least an hour. I get to describe to them everything. I tell them where I'm coming from and why the standardized advice doesn't work and why it's wrong. And there's a lot more success there.
Excellent. That's very cool to hear. On that same note then too, so for the people with the additional advice that you're giving them, is there any sort of basic framework that you're starting from, in the sense that, like, look, first thing you got to do, like, it kind of seems obvious, but perhaps it's not obvious at this point. Like, we've been so unbelievably indoctrinated with like the health, with like the food pyramid and all the information that's out there. Is really one of the first places you're looking? Is it sleep? Is it diet? Is it exercise? What's kind of the common, like, get these things in line first, and you might have a profound impact on your health?
Yeah, I think, the two major pillars of where I work are diet and light. So my first approach is, your diet needs to be animal protein heavy. It needs to be meat heavy. You need to be consuming animal protein with every meal. Most of your nutrition needs to be animal protein. The rest is just things on the side that might make the meat more palatable and give you a little bit more variety, etc. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is you need to be getting as much sun as you can, especially morning sunlight. And this is a rabbit hole that I've been going down for a few years, and it's only getting more and more interesting and more remarkable that I read about it. But a lot of our modern diseases are due to us living an indoor life away from the sun, and due to our artificial light exposure, which unfortunately has skyrocketed over the last 20 years. And so if people get that balance of the correct diet, plenty of animal protein and fat, and they are getting sunlight during the day, and they're keeping their nights darker, this is the most significant jump that people can see in their health. And once you start from there, then there's always other things that we can optimize. But that's, for me, the starting point.
Very interesting. Immediately, the first thing that popped into my mind, too, also just thinking it from the Bitcoin context, was like, okay, surgeries, pharmaceutical interventions, those probably have pretty good margins on them. Doctors saying eat meat and get in the sun, it's not really going to make the hospital a lot of money. So that might be misdirecting things. And I also wonder how much, and maybe we can tease this out a little bit later as well, too. I wonder how much the pharmaceutical companies have played into the research that's going into basically the best practices and standardization for the doctors as well, too. Like, are they funding grants and research that is then being trained in the medical schools and being passed along as like the standard operating procedure? But going back for a second, because I really want to dive into this. First question I want to ask too is you specifically mentioned animal protein. I'm curious your thoughts on animal fat and its importance in the diet as well. Of course, it's going to be there, but like, should we be making sure to include fatty meats perhaps in our diet as well? And then on light, because this is a rabbit hole that I have not gone down, but I've been getting little pieces here and there. Why morning light? And even from a mechanistic standpoint, what actually is the light doing? How is it interacting with our body that's having this effect? And what other kind of nuances around it do we need to be aware of?
Two very good questions. So the starting point for animal fats, there's been just a huge campaign against animal fats, and it's like a double-hinged campaign from two attacking parties. The first party is the processed vegetable seed oil industry, which has huge margins on the money that they make by selling people, toxic vegetable seed oils. And the only way they could convince people to stop eating the fats that their ancestors have been eating for thousands of years is to fund corrupt research showing that animal fats are the cause of heart disease. And there's a lot about this, about how the corruption happened, but basically studies that were showing any link between animal fat and heart disease got blown up in the media by these companies and by the food industry in order to vilify butter, ghee, tallow, animal fats. And instead, they started pushing for all these vegetable seed oils. And at the same time that this was happening, the rates of heart disease kept going up. So that's the first reason why animal fats are attacked. The second reason is the best-selling drug in history are cholesterol medications or statins. And in order to sell these medications, cholesterol started becoming the enemy. Your cholesterol levels or eating cholesterol is going to be the cause of getting heart disease. And once this message started spreading, they started selling this medication. And it was the first medication in history to be prescribed only based on a lab test. You didn't have to have any symptoms. You didn't have to have a heart attack before, but they would still put you on statin. So no wonder why it's the highest selling drug in history. So that is the reason why animal fats have been vilified. But I'm a big fan of animal fats. If you look at cultures from thousands of years ago, cultures that haven't been touched by industrialization, they all adore animal fat. And for them, it's the most important nutrient in the diet. Even cultures that didn't have that much abundance of animal meat, they would still use the fat to cook vegetables, to cook grains, because it included so many nutrients and because the animal fats were so critical to human development. And so that's the first part of the animal fat part. The light story, and this is something that only the last few years I've been getting into. So the most important organelles or structures in your cells are called mitochondria. They are the the power plants of your cells. They're the ones that
I took
generate
7th grade
energy.
biology. I remember that.
Excellent. Here we go. Yeah. So what they don't teach you in 7th grade biology, though, is that these mitochondria that generate the energy that drive every function in your body, these mitochondria are light sensitive. So they are affected by the frequency of light that you are exposed to. And specifically, the infrared, red, and ultraviolet light that you get from the sun, your body uses it to make energy directly, which is pretty incredible to think of. So if you ever go out and spend a lot of time out in the sun, you don't get that much of an appetite because you're actually feeding your body directly from the sun. And it's pretty incredible to think about it that way. So, and we've gotten so used to being indoors all the time that we've lost that link with the sun. Most critical part of the sun is to try as early as possible, as close to the sunrise as possible, to see the morning sunlight and expose as much of your body to the morning sunlight as possible. Because the energy production process in your mitochondria, it turns the on switch once you see the morning sunlight. So if you don't, kind of your metabolism for the entire day is going to be sluggish. So that's the importance of sunlight. On the other hand, artificial light, LED light, which only started in the 20th century being very prevalent in our lives, and lights from monitors, from phones, it emits blue light, frequencies of blue light only that are without UV, red, or infrared light. And this blue light is actually directly toxic to the mitochondria and causes it to not generate energy very well.
Huh.
So what we're doing in modern life is that we're not getting enough sun and we're exposed to blue light all the time. So you can imagine how that can be driving a lot of the diseases that we deal with these days.
That's very interesting. I'm curious, are you aware of any sort of like mechanism involved with that mitochondria using the energy of how it's basically on like would be like a BChem level happening? The first thing that came to mind, and this is just me speculating, I don't think it's necessarily true, was like, okay, I'm wondering if they're able, basically in the mitochondria, if you're able to use the light coming in to actually like excite electrons and move from like ADP to ATP and actually have more precursor energy for the cell.
Exactly. So you use the sunlight to generate ATP. You use the photons of light to drive electron currents, which generate ATP. And that is direct energy for your body to use.
Very cool. Very cool.
Imagine mining Bitcoin cheaper than buying on an exchange with direct payouts hitting your wallet like clockwork. SAS Mining makes it real. You own the rig, no gimmicks. It's your asset pumping out Bitcoin every single day. No markup on hardware or electricity. They get paid when you get paid, fully aligning incentives. Mining Bitcoin below exchange cost is a great way to DCA your stack. It's so simple, anyone can do it. No tech skills required. You get white glove support and education, a rig performance guarantee, plus it's powered by 100% carbon-free energy prioritizing renewables. Ready to take control of your Bitcoin future? Visit sasmining.com by scanning the QR code or clicking the link in the description down below to book a free consult and start mining today.
Are you still delaying taking self-custody of your Bitcoin? Do you feel secure in your current Bitcoin setup? If something were to happen to you, would your stack make it to your loved ones? At Bitcoin Mentor, we've helped thousands of people level up their Bitcoin security and fast-track their understanding. If you find that you simply don't have the time to go through all the books, the tutorials, the guides, you can book a free one-on-one strategy session with myself, Gary, or any of the other great mentors by visiting bitcoinmentor.io. Scan the QR code or simply click the link in the description down below to find out how Ben and the entire expert team at Bitcoin Mentor can help you accelerate your Bitcoin journey. Use promo code BTC Sessions for 10% off.
I'm curious if you have any thoughts, because I've seen a lot of Bitcoiners in the space kind of playing around with this as well too. The blue light filter glasses, is that of any effect? Or I've also heard some people make the case that you really shouldn't be wearing sunglasses, that your eyes need to see the sun in natural light. We don't necessarily want to be filtering that. So I'm curious your thought on both of those in terms of...
Yes, 100%.
Oh, sorry, I was going to add, is the red light therapy of any value as well too? Sorry for interrupting you there.
Yes. Blue light blocking glasses, I started using them a few years ago, and I would say they were definitely life-changing. You don't really...
Wow.
Yes. I wear them every night after sunset. I do, even if when I go out, I wear them. I don't care if I look funny in red lenses. It's your problem, not my problem. So the way they work is, so blue light in nature, our major source of blue light in nature is the sunlight. So if you are exposed to blue light after sunset, your body perceives this as if, oh, it's still noontime. So all your hormones and neurotransmitters that at 8 p.m. should be different than your hormones or neurotransmitters that your body releases at noon. But because all of these processes are controlled by the light that goes into your eye, to your brain, if you're giving your eye the signal that it's noon, then all your hormones in the body are going to be acting as if it's noon. So of course there are skin receptors as well. So I mean, if you want to be 100% covered, you also want to cover your skin, which is a little bit more difficult to do. But the most important receptors are the ones in your eyes. So I'm not a big fan of many pills. I'm not a big fan of any of these gadgets, but I think blue light blocking glasses are definitely worth it. So that's the first part. With regards to sunglasses, sunglasses, in my opinion, are a shitcoin. As I said, in order for your body to generate the proper hormones and neurotransmitters that you need, it needs the entire spectrum of the sun going through your eyes. And it actually does a good job of, it knows the ratios of, say, red light in the morning. There's more red light in the morning, so that means it's the morning. There's more UV light at noon, that means it's noon. There's more red light in close to sunset. So your body kind of knows what the cycle is based on the rays of sun that you're getting through your eyes. This is how beautiful and genius the human body is. By wearing sunglasses, you are blocking the important UV light that's going into your eye. So your body kind of doesn't know the exact time of the day. And this can affect these hormones in your body and the proper cycling of them that occurs based on the signals that your eyes get. And then another important part of this is, if people have an issue with sunburn, sunglasses can worsen sunburn, because the way you build a tan is, it's how you generate melanin in your skin, which is the pigment that gives you that nice tan and acts as protection from UV light in the future. The signal to generate melanin is through the sun that hits your skin, but also the sun that goes through your eyes. So if you're not getting UV light in your eyes, you're not generating enough melanin, and this can predispose you to getting sunburn in the future.
Oh, wow. Huh. That's really interesting. You know, I have to say, listening to all this, just on a human psychology level, what I'm taking from you, I'm really trying to take in, and I already kind of understood some of this based on things I've read from like Fiat Food and other people in kind of, you know, the Bitcoin low time preference space. But as you're talking about all this, I'm thinking, you know, if you were coming at this from some kind of political leftist hippy dippy type thing, because it could easily be coming from that direction, I probably wouldn't be listening to you and taking it in as much. So I just, to me, it's really great hearing some of these, what we'd consider alternative medicine ideas coming from somebody who I guess I trust, because I get the sense that you share a lot of the, you know, the same ideas and ethics as I do. I don't know. That's not really a question. It's just how human psychology works, just an observation. So yeah, thank you for sharing all this.
Yeah, I mean, so the modern medicine has done a good job always of just slandering the other. Historically, you know, any school of thought, any school of medicine that did not practice pharmaceutical-based medicine, all these people were considered quacks. And now anything that's considered natural healing, natural treatment, you know, we just look at them as crazy hippie liberals, and, you know, we have to ignore them. But you know, healing happens because of nature. We live in nature. We come from nature. We're not going to get better from pills made in a factory, designed in a lab. We're going to get better by reconnecting with nature. And this, if I tell this to any of my medicine coworkers, they'll think I'm insane. But I'm glad I'm able to be on this platform to tell you guys it's not insanity. It's just how the human body works, and we have to respect it.
No,
well, and I'm sorry to interrupt, Nate. I've heard you make the distinction before, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I don't believe you're coming from a place where you are completely shunning all of modern medicine. Like if you just suffered a car accident, you're going to a hospital and you're going to try to get fixed up with surgeons with knives to make you better, and not relying on crystal therapy. So could you offer the distinction of what you mean when you say how modern medicine is sort of leading you down the trail always for the next pharmaceutical, when in reality going back to what naturally works for your body is better, and distinguishing that from those times where, yes, modern medicine has made some great advancements and there are times where it should be used?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I would much rather be in a car crash now than 40 years ago. The advances that we've done in the management of acute trauma is nothing short of miraculous. It's quite incredible what they can do. And in general, anything acute, fractures, burns, intoxication, all of this, we do a very good job of handling that. The issue is that quick fix approach doesn't work when you try and extrapolate it to chronic disease. And the reason is that chronic disease happens because there is some dysfunction, some issue in your lifestyle. So unless you address that issue, you're never going to fix this. You're just applying Band-Aids. And the way modern pills work is that the search for the magic pill always is they see that a specific disease process, say someone is getting joint pain. They look at what sort of compounds are being overactive when this person gets joint pain. What sort of molecular pathways are being activated? And so they identify certain molecules and they try and block the receptors for these molecules. And what that does on a basic level is that it's only hiding the eventful result that's causing the pain. The trigger is the pathway that's leading to the pain is not the root cause of the pain. This is just what your body is doing to signify something. What's causing pain is that there's probably some inflammation in the body. And where is this inflammation coming from? That's where traditional medicine tried to look at. So what's in your diet that's affecting this? What's in your lifestyle that's affecting this? Are you sitting wrong? Is your posture wrong? These are all the factors that you need to look into, rather than just look for a pill that hides the symptom. Because what do you do when you hide the symptom with a pill? You're not getting rid of the root cause, and it's going to manifest elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So, okay, he's not going to have joint pain anymore. But does that mean that the joint is not getting destroyed from whatever wrong he's doing to it? Mm-hmm. It's not. And so that's the issue with extrapolating this one pill approach to chronic disease.
I mean, this seems like it comes down to something that we all kind of abide by anyway in the Bitcoin ethos of low time preference. I've had chronic back issues, for instance, for a long time. And I saw a bunch of different people that said, oh, we'll try this thing. And, they kind of have their handbook of like, okay, when you see XYZ, I do A, B, C to your back. And I finally found somebody who was a physical therapist who really took the time to look at specifically what was going on with my particular issue and made this hey, you come in like 3 days a week, I'm going to work on you. Then it was 2 days a week, then once a week, then once every other week. But I haven't had back pain in a couple of years with this guy, but I still go for maintenance every single month because my time preference is like I'm willing to put in the work in order to have a better back long term. And it sounds like some fancy new Bitcoin idea, but this is just an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. This is what we've been saying for centuries.
Yep. The incentives with the system don't align that way. And there's just the simplest way to think about this is that the system is captured. The system is not built to make people better. It's built to make deep pockets deeper.
It's very interesting. I'm curious, Eva. Well, actually, quick side note too, because the first thing that I noticed as well is that when we were talking about like the idea of treating the symptom, it's like not getting back to the root cause, being the issue, being the money, right? What happened were that you were eating like shit 10 years ago, and we're going to try and rectify things now. I want to touch on two things if we can. Maybe we'll start with microbiome, because we're talking about chronic disease. I used to work in microbiome research, and particularly for targeting chronic illnesses. And I'm curious if you have any insight with regarding specifically that, if it's something of consideration, or if it's something that really just can rectify itself and it gets some better improvements from a change in diet. Because it's funny how even a lot of the stuff that we were directly looking at, they rarely looked at food. We're studying microbiome, we're studying gut flora and effects on compounds and drugs and behavior, but it's like they're eating mouse chow. Like, that's shit food. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, the effects of the microbiome on the health is very, very important. It's humongous. You have more bacteria cells in your gut than you have cells in your body. So this is how huge the microbiome is. And they're not just sitting there. They're releasing compounds. They're helping us digest food. They're releasing hormones and neurotransmitters. So they have a very important function in the body. The way your lab and other labs are looking at the microbiome is a bit wrong, though, because what every researcher is hoping for is, so one day I'm going to discover that this one specific strain of bacteria, if I'm able to give it in a pill form, all these problems will go away. So that's their fiat sort of thinking. But the way to think about it is, what sort of things help the microbiome get better? And of course, the answer is diet. Even if you eat crappy things every once in a while, if you have overall a good diet, a good diversity of nutrients, a good that will drive a good microbiome in your diet, in your gut. And also, this is something that very few people talk about, but actually your light environment also affects the kinds of bacteria that you have in your gut and how they act as well. Is also dependent on the light that you receive.
Really?
So that's also very important.
Could you tease that apart a little bit? Because I find that very fascinating. Because again, in these research environments, it's unnatural environment under fluorescent lights under a set, usually 12-12 kind of rhythm for lights on, lights off. Maybe they'll turn on a red light if you got to go in there and do something. Can you talk a little bit more about how the light is impacting the microbiome?
Yeah, so I mean, there's not that much work about this. Dr. Jack Kruse, who I really respect, talks a lot about this. He's talked about studies where they've looked at tribes in Africa that haven't been touched by industrialization, and they go to these tribes and they test their microbiome. They test it before on their regular diet, and then they test it afterwards after they've put them on candy for a couple of weeks. And they see that their microbiome hasn't changed. And what his theory is that because their microbiome is, the microbiome is more dependent on the light that they're getting.
Oh.
And if they're always in natural light and not being exposed to blue light, then the proper bacterial colonies are always forming and prospering. And it's pretty fascinating. I haven't really read that much research about it because it's a very new field. But it makes sense to me.
Yep.
Also, I don't suggest that people go eat candy if their light environment is fine.
I was going to say, as long as I spend time on the beach, I can switch to a strict Kit Kat diet.
Yeah. That I don't know if you should take it that literally, but okay. Yeah.
Okay. Just to I want to put a little bit of a bow on the light topic, and I did want to ask this as well too, because obviously being in natural sunlight is going to be the ideal. And in particular, you're mentioning sunrise. At midday you're getting more UV, so maybe get out of the UV, but you don't necessarily want to not have any exposure to it. As well as then we have sunset. I've seen a lot of people using the red light therapy. If you're having difficulty getting into the sun, you're working like me in a basement right now. Does the red light therapy, does it help at all, or is it still kind of out, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of research on this showing some benefits. Most of the research is based on muscle function, muscle recovery. There's some studies showing it can also help with glucose levels and the glucose metabolism. Some people say it helps for regrowing hair. It definitely doesn't hurt, but what I worry is that people would start using it instead of trying to optimize being in the sun. And it's definitely no alternative for being in the sun. Nothing compensates for being outside in the sun, because even the red light that comes from the sun, you're getting all the wavelengths, from infrared all the way to the yellows, etc. But in red light, they'll give you 1, 2, or 3 wavelengths, and that's it. So there's some utility to it, but it's not as good as sunlight.
Wonderful. Gary, I want to ask a few kind of like different topic questions. Is there anything else that you want to throw in there?
I mean, you mentioned the sunlight thing, and you mentioned burns before, and how a lot of it can be regulated by producing the melanin in your skin just by making sure your eyes are exposed to sunlight. I know some people will still want to use sunscreen. Two questions, I guess. What are your thoughts on sunscreen in general? And how much better are mineral sunscreens than the other kind of chemical hormonal ones? Is there a massive difference?
Yeah, I mean, so sunscreen is a scam. People should try and avoid using sunscreen as much as possible. I've met a lot of people from all sorts of ethnicities all over the world, and regardless of how pale you are, if you are able to play it right, you can get to the point where you're spending a lot of time outside in the sun without getting sunburned. Of course, it requires careful adjusting, and the way to do it is you want to start off by getting exposed to the sun in the early morning, as early as possible, because that's when there's as little UV as possible. You start off with as little UV as possible. You gradually build up your melanin in your skin so that you're able to sit in the sun closer to noon afterwards. There are certain skin types that even if you get very tanned, you're not going to be able to tolerate sitting at noon in the sun on the beach in Jamaica. And we just have to be, careful about that. You can always just use a hat, wear some clothing, or sit in the shade then. And you should just trust your body. If you start feeling hot, then you have to get out of the sun. If someone is traveling, say someone lives in New York City and is taking a vacation to Puerto Rico in the winter, and they're not going to have time to adjust their melanin. Well, the issue with traditional sunscreen is that it contains a lot of hormonally active ingredients. So they work on our hormonal receptors, and they prevent our hormones from acting on these receptors. So it's basically taking something that's blocking the effect of testosterone or estrogen or progesterone in your body, which is kind of a big deal. It's not only affecting your hormonal function, this also has the potential for affecting how malignancies work in the body. So it's kind of a big deal. So that's why I don't like traditional sunscreen. Mineral-based sunscreens are a little bit better. There are studies showing that nano zinc oxide also has effects on the body. It can be toxic to certain organs. So try and look for non-nano-based sunscreen. A combination of like a zinc oxide sunscreen with some tallow is good. And this is, you should only use it in the case that you're taking a vacation in the middle of the winter. But say you live in New York and now the spring is coming about, you have the time. You should start by seeing the morning sunlight and gradually building up your melanin so that in the summertime, you are able to just sit at the pool all day and be fine with it.
Wow.
That's fantastic. I actually want to jump off that a little bit as well, too, because we mentioned hormones and testosterone specifically. We've seen the decline. It seems like men's testosterone levels have been tanking for years now, going lower and lower and lower. I'm curious if you have any thoughts onto what might be underlying that and what might be able to help people get it back up, if that is the case.
Yeah, I mean, so you make hormones from animal fats. You make hormones from cholesterol. So if you're telling people not to eat animal fats, you expect their testosterone levels to drop. That's one. The other thing is blue light. If you're exposed to blue light at night, and a lot of these, a lot of guys are addicted to scrolling the internet at night. What that's doing is that it's elevating your cortisol level, and the raw material that you need in order to generate cortisol is the same raw material that you need to generate testosterone. So your body is thinking, oh, this is, it's daytime. I need a lot of cortisol to keep this guy awake. It's going to shift away the synthesis from testosterone into cortisol. So that's going to drop your testosterone as well. So the diet and the light are a big part of this.
I would think that's,
in my opinion.
I think that stress would then also be another indicator, another contributor as well too, right? Because if cortisol is using the same precursor, if your stress levels are artificially high, you're going to be basically using that supply for the cortisol in the same fashion as for the alertness, and again, none to testosterone.
Yeah, I'm careful with stress does cause that. I'm careful with, just this umbrella term of stress, because you are able to have a very productive life if you are able to get the other stressors out of your system. So other stressors in the form of bad food and bad light. If you're able to optimize for those, you'll have the energy level to be so productive during the day that, your work won't be as stressful as you think it is. And a lot of this work stress that we talk about, it's because you're sitting in a cubicle under artificial light all day. And that's why you feel stressed.
Interesting. Okay, very cool there. Pivoting for a second, then I want to kind of explore a little bit more about like the relationship between Bitcoin and medicine as well. So I want to get into kind of what would patient-doctor relationships look like? What might medicine look like on a Bitcoin standard? Where would you see it kind of progressing? But before I do, because you probably have some interesting insight on this as well, is in the current fiat corrupt system, or maybe even going back through the past, I'm curious in who your mind the biggest villain in this sort of system in setting it up and running it is. Who is one of maybe the bad guys that's created the terrible system we have today?
Yeah, so I mean, the entire process started with this. It's called the Flexner Report. It was written in 1910. So that was around the time the American Medical Association was formed, and at that time, their stated goal was to standardize medical education in the entire United States, so that all the curricula are up to the standards that they want. And so they hired this guy called Abraham Flexner, who was a high school teacher, had no experience in medicine, to draft a report of how can this be done? How can we standardize education? And his recommendations were that any medical school not teaching what he called the scientific method, which is pharmaceutical-based medicine, all these medical schools need to be shut down. So at that point in the 1910s, 60% of medical schools in the US were shut down.
Wow.
And these were the medical schools teaching things that actually worked: naturopathy, homeopathy, osteopathy. So that is why people are so unhealthy these days. That's why medicine is so bad these days. And it goes all the way back till then. And since then, there's just been a huge media campaign to tell people that no, pharmaceuticals work. All these other specialties are quacks. And there's been actual efforts to, if someone is recommending a treatment that is not in the guidelines, he's held liable, we'll put him in jail, we'll take away his license. So there's been active efforts to do that. All of this, it happened in the 1910. What also happened in that era, Bitcoiners would know this, the creation of the infamous Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that thing.
Exactly.
That Jekyll Island little creature.
Exactly. So all of this, it's no coincidence that it all happened at the same time. And in order to, this random doctor in middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, in order to go and prosecute them for how they're treating their own patients and put them in jail if they're not practicing our own medicine, or shut down his medical school because it doesn't adhere to the standards that we care about. That takes money to do that. And if you have an infinite amount of money from the money printer, that's how you're able to keep this running. And this is why Bitcoin will hopefully fix this.
Beautiful. So with that then, Bitcoin standard, we're moving forward, like immediately, especially from the Canadian perspective here, right? As soon as I try and tell everybody, like, look, you can't really tax on Bitcoin either as well too. The idea of removing their like public health care, they just lose it. Regardless of how atrocious it is, how wrong it's been, how worse it's getting, it's growing in administrative size. Like I remember we were talking this weekend about it. It's something like the population of Alberta is like 2-3 times larger, but the admin for Alberta Health Services is a 20x, but you're getting way worse in terms of quality. So fiat is terrible. We're moving to Bitcoin. How do you see it actually evolving? What would Bitcoin medicine look like?
Yeah, I mean, so, having national health insurance, having, government cover this comes from a good place. people get into bad accidents and they have huge medical bills that they can't cover. And it does make sense to have an insurance company that would cover this, or the government cover this. Traditionally, before government got involved in this business, people were in closer societies with each other. Someone was attached to a church, and if something bad happened, the church would raise funds for that person. And that's how it used to work. And that's, fiat has done a job of trying to replace human relationships with government. And so you would still have some sort of societal safety net for these crazy events. And that's important. I don't think that your day-to-day doctor visit and your day-to-day doctor appointments should be covered by insurance, because it's kind of like an open buffet for every day. If you're not paying for something, you're gonna start and abuse it, and then it just removes the free market from the process. And so this is a very important distinction to make, because right now, if someone gets knee pain, they want every test in the world done for it. But if there's a price attached to what you're asking for, then their perception of what the pain is and their perception of how far they're going to go with it is going to be a part of the consideration. That said, the prices that we see nowadays in medicine in the Western world are just hyper-inflated by the fact that insurance companies cover everything. So it's a very complex process. And Andy Schoonover from Crowd Health has done a very good job of talking about this. And his company's model is quite impressive in the way that they've kind of maneuvered away from the system and are still able to help people by directly paying cash to physicians and to hospitals to get away from all this corrupt system. And I think the future is closer to that, things similar to that. Direct pay, you paying your physician directly based on how they treat you, etc.
Very interesting. I'm curious if you see, because I've always had the idea in my mind that it might move to something almost along the lines of like an ongoing relationship directly with your doctor. And hopefully the idea there being that it would incentivize prevention, because the doctor doesn't want to necessarily have any expensive interventions. But it could even be like, it could basically be like a subscription model. Where like, I have a relationship with you. I'm paying you, I don't know, we'll just say 500 US per month or whatever it might be. And you're just in charge of keeping me healthy, whatever that kind of might entail.
100%. The current model is built, the more healthcare interactions you have with a physician, with a hospital, with pharmacies, the more money that everyone makes. So there's no incentive to keep you healthy. There's models now in operation in the US and in Canada called direct primary care, where you pay your physician a standard fee per year and per month, and you can see them as many times as you need. So at that point, the physician's incentive is to keep you healthy so that he doesn't have to see you that much. And that makes sense. Incentives align in that case.
Very cool. Gary, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we talked about coming up with a future Bitcoin standard and a wonderful future world where all this gets better. We have flying cars, everybody gets laid. It's fantastic. But until we get to that point, we're still in the fiat model, and some things obviously are more expensive in the fiat model, like meat. And fortunately, I'm in a situation where I can afford that. But to the person who, say, may not be able to afford a steak for every meal and is just relying on these cheap processed foods to get by, what are some advice you might have for them to try to, get the animal fats and the animal nutrients that they need while still keeping their costs down?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, and also there's like a kind of a fiat mindset where you need a lot of things in order to replace meat, but once you have meat, you don't need all these other things. So ground beef is a great way to start. There's very cheap ground beef everywhere. There's very cheap cuts of meat, the leaner ones that can do a good job. Organ meats are also relatively cheap. You can get a lot of bones to make bone broth. You can get it from your butcher basically for free. So that's a good way to start. If you're replacing the fats that you're cooking with and you're eating with animal fats, they might be expensive, but they go a lot longer. You can use them for a lot longer than you can use oils, say. So that also helps. So that's a good starting point. And, you eat better. Hopefully that makes you feel better. You'll be more productive. You'll be happier. And this is a good place to start, even if it's just a little bit more ground beef every day.
Yeah, to your point, when I started having a greater meat-based diet, I didn't feel as hungry as often. I didn't feel like I needed to constantly snack. So I think there is something to that. Thank you, Dr. Ammous.
Yeah.
All right, I have a question that I'll probably get slapped down by the good doctor on, but I'm very curious. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on nicotine in particular, not tobacco, but specifically nicotine as a compound.
Yeah, so this is a very, very deep rabbit hole. I have not gone as deep as I would like to there. Nicotine is a natural substance. It exists not only in tobacco, it exists in eggplants, it exists in tomatoes. You don't see people getting addicted to eggplants or to tomatoes.
I know, I've met some crazy vegans.
But yeah. So there's some talk out there that nicotine is not really the most addictive thing about cigarettes. It's actually the other additives that they put on the tobacco. And also all the bad thing that happened from tobacco, a lot of them could be due to the pesticides that they put on the tobacco plants. So the rates of lung cancer, all these sort of illnesses have gone up after we started using all these artificial fertilizers. So that's one school of thought. How, if you're able to get like 100% organic tobacco, is that good for you or not on the long term? I don't know. Hopefully there are people studying this. I don't mind. I don't see an issue with nicotine itself, and some people report even that it could be good for your health. So I don't know that much about it.
Interesting. That's okay. As long as the judgment is still waiting and we still have some open question there, that's great for me. That means I can continue all my fun little habits on the side that keep me alert for these conversations. Beautiful.
Yeah, and speaking of habits, we were talking about testosterone before. Would you recommend that I increase my porn watching to help my testosterone?
Yeah, I mean, in moderation.
Okay. In moderation. Oh, okay. Yeah, fair enough. The classic in moderation.
This is actually this is something that I think a lot of men should look more into. But the more men should be aware of like semen retention techniques and what that entails, because it kind of unlocks the next level of you as a human being if you're able to go for a while without ejaculating.
Actually, please continue. I wanted you to expand upon that a bit more as well, too, because in the other side that I've heard the argument is prostate issues if you're not.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah, I mean, so I've heard both aspects. I think also in moderation, like if you have a partner and you're having sex regularly, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to try for a bit, go a month without it and see how that makes you feel. You are going to get to a point where you're a lot more sharp, you're a lot stronger, you're a lot more kind of aggressive, but in a good way. It's something to look into. And I think, I mean, rather than men wasting there's a saying in like Tao medicine that it takes 4 drops of blood to make 1 drop of semen, because semen has so much nutrients and it's so difficult for your body to generate. So there's a lot of energy that your body is putting into generating the semen. And if you are just going there, wasting it on Pornhub, it's taking away a lot of your vital energy. And there are techniques where what you do is you try and recycle the energy. I don't want to be too graphic in how you do that. People can look it up. And rather than waste the energy by masturbating, you can recycle the energy and see how it'll change your life, give you energy, and it'll also give you more energy to go out there, talk to women, hopefully find a partner that you can practice consensual loving sex with, because that is the best way to deal with that energy.
Cool.
I love how this has become the most professional Bitcoin circle jerk at the end that ever possibly could have happened, and I absolutely love it. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so stop dumping every night, get in the sun, eat your meat. You're going to be in a much, much better position. And of course, stack Bitcoin so we can get to that better society. And Dr. Ammous, this has been absolutely fascinating and interesting. Oh, and I'm allowed to have nicotine, which is great. Please tell us, where can we go to check out your work? Where can they go? If they want to book you, if they want to work with you and get you as a consultant for health, where can they go for that as well too?
Yes, so I'm at ammousmd.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm most active on Twitter at ammousmd. I also have an Instagram with the same handle. Feel free to shoot me a message or an email. Love to talk to people.
If you enjoyed this episode with Dr. Ammous, please do like, share, and subscribe. And check out the previous episode with Phil Champagne on Bitcoin versus altcoins.